members of Parliament, support staff, radio listeners, TV viewers, all those viewing via social media, members of the media, good afternoon to all, and welcome to this Central Committee meeting number 16 for today, Tuesday, April 16, 2024. At this time, I want to give a special welcome to the representatives of the University of St. Martin, USM. Welcome. We have established a quorum of 4 members, 4 factions, and 5 members, and I invite you to stand for a moment of silence. Thank you. I have received notice of absence or notice of lateness from the members De Weaver, the member Jacobs, and the member Duran, as well as MP Irian. Those members have sent a notification of lateness. I look at the members here present and ask if there are any other notifications to be made at this time. I don't see that being the case, so we continue with the agenda point for today. And the agenda point for this meeting is the discussion on the draft National Ordinance Higher Education and Research with the USM. This document is registered on the number 276, dated December the 13th, 2023. The second agenda point for this meeting is the approved draft national decree extending the National Recovery Bureau with 2 years. That document is registered on the IS 443 and is dated the 27th of February of this year. So going over to agenda point number 1, as mentioned on December the 13th of last year, the Parliament received a letter from President of USM, Professor Dr. Antonio Carmona Bayes, with a request for an audience with the Central Committee of Parliament to discuss the above-mentioned agenda point. This draft national ordinance has been handled in the Central Committee and is actually awaiting handling in a public meeting. USM, however, has indicated their desire to present their views to Parliament before the handling of this draft national ordinance in a public meeting of Parliament. So, hence, this agenda point today. At this time, I therefore want to give the floor to the USM representatives, and you will indicate who of you will go first to make some opening remarks, and I realize a presentation is part of that as well. So, I see Mr. Pompier, you're going to take the lead in this. Mr. Pompier, you have the floor.
Good afternoon, Madam Chair. Good afternoon, Madam Chair and members of the Central Committee. Thank you for this opportunity. First of all, I want to extend apologies from the President of the Board of USM, who is unable to be here today because of traveling. So, but we are excited to be here, and the management team is ready to give a presentation, which actually was scheduled for last year, but it was postponed. So we want to thank Madam Chair and also the Central Committee for making this meeting possible. The draft law, in fact, the law on higher education is important to USM because it's important to the development of USM's future. But it's also important for the country to have a law on higher education that regulates this higher education. This is not the case in St. Martin, and what it does, it creates undue skepticism regarding the level of and also the quality of higher education on the island. So this is something that is very, very urgently needed. The team this afternoon is ready to make a presentation, and they would be recommending some changes to the draft law, which would help to facilitate its implementation. So we would like to also, of course, answer any questions, or the team would like to answer any questions that you have regarding the presentation, of course. So the idea is, at least we hope that after this meeting, that the information that we provide would help to expedite the passing of this law. So thank you again for the opportunity, and I'd like to pass the word now to the president of USM, Dr. Camona Baez, who will introduce the rest of the team and continue with the presentation from there on.
Thank you, Mr. Pompier, for that introduction. It would be amiss of me, before going over to Dr. Camona Baez, to not express on behalf of Parliament to the University of St. Martin our condolences with the passing and the burial today of the late Dorothy Richardson. So on behalf of Parliament, I want to take this opportunity, considering the importance for her of this law and of education. I think it's not more than appropriate to use the opportunity and extend our condolences to, in fact, family, friends, everyone, but University of St. Martin in particular. So let me do that. And now, Dr. Camona Baez, I give you the floor.
Thank you, Madam Chair, and good afternoon to all the members of Parliament. Indeed, this morning we bade farewell to Dorothy Richardson, a woman who believed in education, who was a fervent supporter of higher education. And I would ask permission to hold perhaps 20 seconds of silence. Would that be okay, Madam Chair?
Yes, I will allow that because I made it after our moment of silence. I made my comments, so of course we will honor your request and have that. And I would invite us all to stand once again. Thank you.
Thank you. Madam Chair, I would like to begin first by introducing the management team that has accompanied me this evening, this afternoon. To my left, far left, we have Mr. Pastor Wycliffe Smith, who has been serving as acting president of USM during my extended leave. And next to him, we have Mr. Robert Judd, who serves as manager of finance and operations. And to my right, we have Dr. Gail Rigobert, the Dean of Academics at USM. I would like to start off by congratulating all the members of Parliament, incumbent as well as newcomers, to the Staten van Land St. Martin. And thank you, Madam Chair, for inviting us to offer this presentation. Honourable members of Parliament, if all went well, you should have received two documents yesterday with amendments sent early this afternoon. One is the presentation that we're about to give, and the second one is a more detailed narrative explaining our suggested amendments, corrections, and adjustments to the draft legislation. In this document, you will see in the introduction that Country St. Martin has been trying to have this law passed for the last 21 years. So it's been 21 years since we had that first initiative to have a law or an ordinance on higher education. Before it was called tertiary education. Then it was called the Ordinance, National Ordinance on Higher Education. And thanks to the revisions that were made based upon consultation with the community, we now have a National Ordinance on Higher Education and Scientific Research. So I invite all the members of Parliament to review this document that clearly explains our motives for suggesting changes and amendments to the Landverordeningen. I would like also to mention that this year, USM is commemorating, or celebrating rather, 35 years of existence. And if you think about the 21 years since we've made that first initiative to have national legislation that regulates higher education, and if we think about the life of Dorothy Richardson, who has inspired us, and our 35th anniversary, I would just like to say on behalf of the USM family that we would really like to see Country St. Martin pass legislation this year to honor all those who have dedicated their lives to education, but also for future generations of our beloved country and island. We'll go next. Thanks. So what we would like to do today is just give some comments on the draft legislative piece, offer our recommendations for amendments and changes, and then, of course, entertain any questions regarding USM or our suggestions to amend or make changes to the document. As you know, or as I just stated, USM has been in existence for 35 years. It's just 1 year younger than the University of Aruba, which was just celebrated its 35th anniversary last year. We continue to be the newest, the youngest, and the smallest university within the Kingdom of the Netherlands, but not that insignificant if you take into consideration what USM has produced in terms of leadership for not only Country St. Martin, but also the region, and also the research products that USM has brought to the community. You can see our mission statement and our vision statement, which differs greatly from previous mission and vision statements. And I ask that everyone take these words into consideration as we consider the importance of the legislative piece that we're about to analyze. Next. So we found 4 major issues, and I just would like to say that there's a lot to say about this legislative piece, and we've decided that for the sake of time and to ensure that this legislative piece is passed as soon as possible, we've decided just to hone down on specific areas of concern that the university has for the national legislation. So the first issue is that USM is not recognized as the principal higher education institution of Country St. Martin, and we would like that to be rectified. There's also issues of funding, finances, and tuition. And we would also like to speak of the Eurocentricity of the law, with special mention to degrees and different forms of higher education. And finally, the question of terminology, where USM provides a glossary with correct translations of terms. I'd like to start off by recognizing that USM is the main institution of higher education and scientific research on the island of St. Martin. We serve not only students from this side of the Concordia border, but the entire island, but also our sister islands of Ceiba and Saint Eustatius. Board and management of USM believes that it is not enough to mention USM in the Memorie van Toelichting, but we kindly ask the members of parliament to consider having USM mentioned within the law itself. And so we have provided here an Article X, adding the number that will be adopted, that will recognize USM as the main institution of higher education, just like any other country within the Caribbean part of the Kingdom of the Netherlands. So the article we've provided here, the suggested amendment, we've provided here in both English and Dutch in order to save time and work. I know it would have to be reviewed, but we're asking for USM to be recognized as a special institution operating in the form of a legal entity with full legal capacity that should be funded at a minimum of 80% by and on behalf of the country. Next. If this is not possible, if this is not desirable to add a new article, we would like to suggest an alternative to a new article to this legislative piece. And we've provided this by suggesting an amendment to Article 93, which would read as Article 93, Section 12. And again, we have it in both Dutch and English. And that amendment would read, by national decree containing general measures and appendix listing funded and non-funded institutions for higher education and science is included, including USM. And so that it would just require that the Parliament would add or approve an appendix to this law, to the ordinance rather. Thank you. As far as tuition is concerned, the costs associated with higher education, we go back, look at our suggestion to Article 8.1. Above, you will see the legislative piece as it is currently written, and then we have a suggestion whereby the government would require a contribution from the student towards the costs associated with their study. And the amount of the tuition fees should be subjugated to regulations by national ordinance and containing measures in consultation with the institution. We believe that it is necessary to create a sphere based on this legislation where, again, USM is not seen as a client but a partner of government, and so that any changes in the fees and the tuitions that will affect, of course, our student body, that be done in consultation with the institution, the concerned institution, in this case being USM. We have also suggested changes to Article 9, more specifically 9.2, Section 2, where previously, or as the legislative piece is written now, the minister can recognize the request for a special program and request funds or a fee for same. We would advocate for eliminating Section 2 of Article 9, because it is our understanding that the government of country St. Martin does not intend on having a public accreditation bureau. So in this case, USM would have to pay for recognition or accreditation for all new programs. An additional required fee would be onerous on our small institution. So USM is currently financed according to a funding model that was established a couple of years ago, which takes into consideration operational costs as opposed to the number of enrolled students. The current article emulates the ordinance for elementary and secondary education. And if we're going to take the effort to put forth a landverordening, a national ordinance on higher education, we would like the honourable members of Parliament to consider a different calculation method that is used by other similar institutions in our region. And so that in Article 95.4, we would have the calculation method be according to our yearly operational costs, and we would like to do this to achieve the minimum level in line with other institutions of higher education within the Kingdom of the Netherlands, and that being a minimum of 80%. And we also have a suggestion for Article 99.3 regarding the annual report, whereas the current legislative piece in its current state suggests that an annual report will be published no later than the 31st of January of the financial year, following the academic year for which the funding was provided. And we would like to suggest that the annual report for the preceding calendar year, which is the term that is used in Dutch, boekjaar, that will be published no later than the 31st of July. As right, the 31st of July, as our audits and all other documents related to reporting, financial reporting, is given at this time. We use the calendar year, not the academic year, for all our reporting, and we would like that to stay the same. Mr. Judd, do you have anything to add on that?
If I may, the consideration here is that the way the draft is written right now, the institution, any institution, would be under the obligation to look at two sets of auditing and reporting. One would be based on the academic year to be submitted by January 31st, and then you still have your normal fiscal year, December 31st, because most institutions have a year end of December 31st, or at least we do. So it adds additional administrative cost. And in the past, up until now, everything's been done based on the December year end. It still covers a 3-semester period, which would be the full year. And in higher education, the academic year is maybe not as critical as the high school, secondary, because you can graduate once you've completed all your credits. There's no time schedule. The class has to complete by July 31st to move on. So it can be done a little more fluent than the secondary and high school. But the more critical thing is to reduce the reporting, which would now be 2 sets of audit and reporting.
Thank you, Mr. Judd. And the same goes for Article 100, Section 1. We just asked that we change that reporting due date from January to July. Next. Of course, when legislative pieces are written, and we know that they continue to be written in Dutch, hoping that one day we will have legislation in this country that is written in the language of the people of the country. We know that there's, of course, much reference made to other legislative pieces, to other countries within the kingdom. And so we understood that the draft legislation was somewhat of a copy and paste of the Dutch law on higher education. identified some aspects of Eurocentricity within the national ordinance draft. And there is some content that does not pertain or is not applicable to country St. Martin. So we wanted to go over these. First one is in Article 6 in the nomenclature. The University of St. Martin, like other institutions of higher education in the Dutch and US Caribbean, does not make a distinction between HBO and VO. HBO being Hogere Beroep Onderwijs, which in English translates into the University of Applied Sciences, and VO, it's wetenschappelijk onderwijs, or scientific education, as you have in the Netherlands, the difference between the University of Applied Sciences and the universities. Just like the University of Curaçao and the University of Aruba, because of our size and because of what each university means to all the countries, and because we in the Caribbean have access to a variety of traditions, of education traditions, we do offer HBO level degrees as well as VO level degrees, but within one institution that is neither HBO or VO. And so our recommendation would be to eliminate Article 6 of this legislative piece. Then we make a suggestion for changes in Article 18. There is reference to the Anglo-Saxon versus the European system. Personally, I do not like the term Anglo-Saxon system, but we're not going to be nitpicking is the word here. For this, we want this legislation to pass. We will accept the term Anglo-Saxon European, but it is very important to include the Caribbean tradition of higher education, the Caribbean systems, and we would like that to be added to Article 18. Then we have suggested changes for Article 33 and 34. Again, we would like the Caribbean system of higher education to be recognized in this legislative piece. Therefore, changing the titles of Articles 35, 36, and 37 accordingly. Then we have amendments to Articles 33 and 34. Here we have, in the legislative piece, which again was based on the experience of the Dutch legislative piece, which does not recognize the GED. And the GED, the General Equivalency Diploma, is a very important stepping stone for many here in country St. Martin, and you're seeing it more and more throughout the Caribbean. And we would like our legislative piece, what would make distinct from other legislation in other parts of the kingdom, is the recognition of the North American General Equivalency Diploma. And we have it here again in English and Dutch, and that would be for Articles 33 and 34. And then Article 50 concerning diplomas or degrees, in line with Articles 45, 55, and 57. We know that the bachelor and master degrees can be complemented with not only cum laude, but cum laude, summa cum laude, and magna cum laude. And we have that added in Section 5, again, in English and Dutch. We have looked over the glossary of terms, and we've looked to translate these accordingly. We know that we cannot use Google Translate to understand legislative pieces. So it really took the host of us, management board and other advisors to USM to look at the language that is used. We provided these, and I would like to let the honorable members of parliament know that if there's any question regarding other terms, please let us know. We'll be more than happy to have this academic institution jargon translated for you. Article 17 refers to minors, treatment of minors. At the University of St. Martin, we cater to adults. We had the simple recommendation just to remove references to minors here, if possible. Yes. And that's it. So once again, we'd like to emphasize our desire to have USM mentioned in the national ordinance. We've presented considerations for funding and reporting, as well as for tuition. We request that the national ordinance be made appropriate, both in language and terminology. And with that, Madam Chair, I would like to conclude. If we could open up for questions and answers. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you, Dr. Kamuna Bayes and Mr. Robert Judd, for those answers and introduction of the presentation. Members of Parliament, you have the opportunity now to ask any questions on the presentation, as well as the draft ordinance, which, as has been explained at the beginning, has come to Parliament from the government, and on request of USM, we allowed before the public handling this presentation with the views of USM on the draft that is at Parliament at this time. So members of Parliament, to whom can I give the floor at this moment? I see MP Mercelina. MP Mercelina, you have the floor.
Chair, members of Parliament, Secretary General, the people in the public, the audience, and of course the guests, thank you very, very much for being here today. I have a few questions. I did not get the concept of Eurocentricity. Are we focusing on Eurocentricity, or are we not focusing for the University of St. Martin on Eurocentricity? It was not clear for me what exactly the vision was for development of this institution for higher education, with the concept of Eurocentricity or not. That's one. For me, it's a little new that we are developing a draft national ordinance, and we are going to make it custom-made for an institution. In general, we make landsverordeningen with vision for higher education, and we make sure that in our law we can accommodate an institution like University of St. Martin. So I do not understand that we are departing from the position of USM, what I understand due to your passion and your dream for St. Martin, but I do not understand why should we explicitly mention the USM in a landsverordening that regulates actually the institution for higher education for country St. Martin. And if we do that, what is the options for possibilities for further development of institutions of higher education for the country in the future, except USM? Or are we looking forward to a monopoly position when we're looking at USM? Otherwise, I do not understand why we should draft and mention explicitly the USM in the national ordinance. I do not get the statement made about the HBO, de hoger beroepsonderwijs, en de wetenschappelijk onderwijs, de WO. If you have a university, actually, you are busy entertaining wetenschappelijk onderzoek, the WO, as if we go back to the context that I know education organized, if you're talking about Eurocentricity. And if you want to give education on HBO-niveau, you go to a hogeschool. That will never be a university, except if that hogeschool is just in an agreement with the institution. University is just making use of the facility of the building to realize their course. So I would like to know, is this university focused on WO, HBO, or what exactly it has to be in the nomination in the landsverordening? Are we for St. Martin, which reference are we using when we are seeking clarification on equivalency in level of education? And why I make this statement is we are a young country, and I think the first thing that has to happen is for us to define for ourselves as a young country what are the levels of education that I want for my country, instead of searching and looking for equivalencies while we didn't define as a country yet what we want as a vision for actually WO or HBO opleiding for St. Martin. So what do we want with this country? Are we going to do it in a way that is going to have as vision to actually accommodate students from the region too? Is it going to be explicitly to focus on actually accommodating the necessities of the labor market of St. Martin? Why do we do this with the University of St. Martin? Is it because we want a local regional recognition, involvement to go with the developments of the Caribbean? Or are we doing this with our first intention to actually accommodate the necessity of our community and actually build our professional treasury for our country that we are in dear need of? These are my questions. Thank you.
Thank you, MP Mercelina. Members of Parliament, any other questions? MP La Cruz, did I see your finger? Yes, I did. So, MP La Cruz, you have the floor.
Thank you, Madam Chair Lady, and a blessed afternoon to all those in the Tribune and my fellow members of Parliament. That is it. One of the things that MP Mercelina mentioned was one of my questions, which is that new article that would be added. But when I read it in Dutch, it says de Universiteit van Sint Maarten fungeert als de primaire instelling voor hoger onderwijs en wetenschappelijk onderzoek van het land en wordt erkend als een bijzondere instelling die uitgaat van een natuurlijke persoon of rechtspersonen met volledig rechtsbevoegdheid die bekostigd wordt tot het maximum van 80% door of vanwege het land. Is this included because of the financing alone? So the request is that the University of St. Martin becomes the main institution because government St. Martin the request is that 80% is paid by the government of St. Martin. So is that the reason why this article would be added? Because it's, and I echo the sentiments of MP Mercelina. How are we going to do that if, and what would happen if another institution will want to come into the country? Does that mean that there will be no funding in this way? This article would come in, will they not get funding because this article only specifies or is specifically made and catered to the University of St. Martin? That's my only question. Thank you.
Thank you, MP La Cruz. I see MP Roosberg also requesting the floor. You may continue, MP Roosberg.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Thank you, Secretary General. Thank you for the presentation, and my colleagues and the ones in the public listening and online. To add to what my colleague MP stated, and also studying the presentation, I was wondering why it cannot just be referred to in the Memorie van Toelichting, because I understood that MP Marcelina and also La Cruz made mention of the question, like why it has to be specifically mentioned in the landsverordening, while knowing that if you look at the memorie van toelichting and the university or the explanation of what a university should be sufficient. I'm trying to understand as well the reasoning behind that, because I believe if it's focused on making sure that USM falls in that, you can cover it with a memorie van toelichting. So through you, Madam Chair, I would like to have clarification on that, just to add to the points of my colleagues. Also, clarification, MP Marcelina already mentioned it, but if you look at the Article 6, the naamgeving, where the hogeschool or university should not be mentioned, or should not be made no difference in HBO or WO. Also that I would like clarification on, because when I hear university, I think of university WO, and when I hear hogeschool, HBO, I think of something with HBO level, connection to HAVO versus VWO diploma degree, and then you go to the university. But then, furthermore, I'm seeing, for example, Article 33, where amendment, to add an amendment, and to also add the GED. So then, also that falls within the university. So I'm a little bit confused to understand how all of that falls within the university. And also for the community of St. Martin, it's important to know that when you go to USM, what you can expect and what degree you can get, and when you have that degree, what other options are there for you in the work field. And I believe at this moment it's not really clear, at least not for me, and I would have to explain it also to the community, what you can expect once you go to USM. So those are my questions through you, Madam Chair.
Thank you, MP Roseberg. And before I continue to see if there are any other members of Parliament, I just wish to make mention of the fact that MP Gums had sent in her apologies for not being able to be here at this meeting. And in addition to that, you would all realize that at this point, cake is being shared out, and I encourage you to enjoy it, considering that you're part of our meeting this afternoon, also to the members of Parliament. And it's actually a belated celebration of my birthday, and it was prompted and held to by a member of Parliament who's shaking his head and telling me don't call his name, but if you look good, you'll see which member. So I want to thank him. That's what I want to do at this time. Thank you so much, and please do enjoy. And while it might be a belated one for me, we do have a member of staff whose birthday it is today. So we have more than one reason to celebrate. So thank you. No, it's not our SG. But it's Mr. Hassel. So on behalf of Parliament, we extend our congratulations to Mr. Hassel at this time as well. So do enjoy as we continue this meeting, and I look to see if there are any other questions from members of Parliament. I don't get that indication. So I turn now to my right, and I ask the representatives of USM, would you like a few moments to go over the questions, or you can go right into them? Okay, sure. Then I invite you to respond to the questions by members of Parliament. You have the floor.
Thank you, Madam Chair, and thank you, MP Marcelina, MP La Cruz, and MP Rosberg for your questions. I would like to start off with the last question that MP Rosberg left us with, just to get that out of the way and to go into the other questions. Regarding Article 33 in reference, Article 33 refers to the requirements for entering higher education. So that would be HAVO, it would be to go to the HBO in the Netherlands, or VO, or HBO plus what they call tussenjaar, an extra year to enter into what they call in the Netherlands the VO, the university. What we are asking here with this change is for the legislation to recognize the GED as a degree that would allow anyone to enter the university. And so currently, USM accepts those who have completed their GED. Of course, upon acceptance, each student will have to take a placement exam to see at which level they are operating in, I believe it is English, but also math and science, is it? Or
English, math, Dutch, and computer science.
English, math, Dutch, and computer science. This follows other institutions of higher education in the Caribbean region and in North America, namely in the United States and Canada, where we know that with a GED, you can enter Harvard University in the United States. We would like to have the same opportunities given to our people here in St. Martin. Going back to the question that the three honorable MPs presented, why specifically USM? Why is it not sufficient to have USM mentioned in the Memorie van Toelichting? And the answer to that one question is that having USM mentioned in the Memorie van Toelichting is important, it is nice, but we would like to have the law recognize that institution that serves the country. And not only the country, but the entire island. If we look back in history, when we were part of the country Netherlands Antilles, we know that we had one university serving the entire Netherlands Antilles. That was the UNA. University of the Netherlands Antilles. That was established by law. That was established by a national ordinance in Willemstad. And that university served the entire Netherlands Antilles. We know that shortly after Aruba pulled out of the Netherlands Antilles, that a year later they established their own university. And we would like to see similar action taken 12 years later with the development of country St. Martin. Also taking into consideration, and I forgot to mention this when I made remarks on honoring our late Dorothy Richardson, nation building. For each country to develop social, economically, politically, culturally, it is important to have that kenniscentrum, that center of knowledge, which we recognize as the university, and in this case, in St. Martin, the University of St. Martin. So we would want, of course, the university to be recognized within the law, not just the Memorie van Toelichting, but also specifically state the country's commitment to supporting this kenniscentrum, this center of knowledge that we call the University of St. Martin, and yes, with funding, with backing, with funding. It is not because of the funding that we want it to be mentioned in there, but we would like this to be a legislative piece with energy, and with commitment on behalf of the Staten van Land St. Martin, as well as the government from St. Martin, in order to serve, as our mission statement says, as the motor for social economic development on this binational community. MP Marcelino, when you and I studied in the Netherlands, there was no such thing as a bachelor's or a master's. You went to the university, and you went to the university from VWO, and you immediately got your master's degree, the equivalent of a master's degree. I state this because it is important for us to understand the ever-changing nature of higher education worldwide. And we see currently in the Netherlands that the walls between HBO and VO continue to be deteriorated. We see the electorate within HBO. We see that HBO can now offer not only bachelor's degrees, but also master's degrees. And our tradition, or the tradition upon which USM was built, taking into consideration liberal arts, I want to stress that that is the kind of institution that we are. We are a liberal arts institution. Some call it the Anglo-Saxon system, others call it the North American system. I prefer to use the term liberal arts. That it is important not to make that distinction between applied sciences and theoretical sciences. Of course, there is a difference, but the institution should host both the applied sciences as well as natural sciences. And that is the case in Curaçao, and that is the case in Aruba. And that is the case also with the University of the West Indies. And that is the case with the University of Puerto Rico, the University of the Virgin Islands, all the universities in Cuba, and of course, the rest of the Americas. We know that this legislative piece was written based on knowledge accumulated from the experience of Dutch universities or other universities within the kingdom, but we would like to make this a uniquely St. Martin experience in the passing of this legislation, entertaining both areas of the sciences, applied and theoretical, so that our bachelor's degree and our master's degree, and eventually our doctoral degrees will be recognized worldwide, and it would be up to the Dutch institutions to judge whether the programs we offer are HBO or VO, which we've had no problem doing in our relations. As you know, we continue to build strong ties with institutions in the Netherlands and throughout the Caribbean. I hope that satisfies that one question, in terms of the HBO versus VO. The equivalency in education is something that USM, we're at an advantage in comparison to other institutions within the Kingdom of the Netherlands, because we've always received students from different traditions of secondary education. You have on the islands of Aruba and Curaçao one system, and on the southern part of our beloved St. Martin, we have 4 different traditions of secondary education operating for a population of approximately 60,000. Let's say for the entire island, we have 5 traditions of higher education, with the French serving as the sole tradition in the north, but we also have North American, or we have US, Canadian, Dutch, and Caribbean with the CXC. So our admissions office has for a long time been busy, and it's familiarized itself with equivalency. It is just where we are positioned geographically, and as a result of our historical development, that we have to continue to look at equivalency in terms of education. Yes, I agree, we must define what are the levels of education that we provide. We're actually the first institution within the kingdom to provide an associate's degree. Now the Netherlands, within the last 5 years, has started to offer associate's degrees. So we have been at the cutting edge, and where we want to be is at the cutting edge of higher education institutions and scientific research in service of country St. Martin. MP Roseberg, you brought the question of Article 6, and you asked for clarification there. Can you go back to Article 6?
Right there.
All right, yes, I think, I've tried to answer that. I think that has been quite answered. Honorable MP La Cruz, your question was what would happen if another institution of higher education would come, and what would be the consequences of mentioning USM within the law. That is exactly why we've provided that alternative, that if an article cannot be sent, then an appendix will be added to the law, and this is what is done in the current Dutch law of higher education, recognizing the institutions of higher education. We would prefer that USM would be mentioned directly in the law, but if that is not possible, at least have that appendix where USM is recognized, so that it is recognized within the law as well as in the memory van toelichting. Will another institution be or would it qualify for receiving 80% funding? And this is why we would like to see a specific article dedicated to the university. So in Curaçao and Aruba, you will have legislation concerning the university, as well as legislation regarding higher education. Right, and that's what you see in Curaçao. Aruba is at the same state that we are. They're considering legislative pieces to correct that. The higher education institutions that will come in the future, I think that we could look to Curaçao and Aruba and see that there are also private institutions of higher education, so that the government recognizes, according to law, according to the ordinance, our national university, the university, the main institution of higher education, but it also recognizes other institutions of higher education. Do they receive subsidies? Well, they do. There are private institutions within Curaçao that receive subsidies on a project-based on a project basis. So by projects, the government or the Ministry of Education would subsidize certain projects or certain courses or certain degree or diploma or certificate programs on occasion. But what we're asking for here is full commitment from the Parliament, from the government, to recognize USM and to support USM in serving country St. Martin. And so in our suggested legislative, our suggested change to the legislation in the alternative, we mention both the bekostigde and niet bekostigde, both the funded and non-funded, and that will be listed, of course, in the appendix. So there should not be any contradiction there. I hope that these satisfies the questions.
Thank you,
Madam Chair.
Dr. Carmona Baez, and I see that MP Roosburg is requesting the floor. MP Roosburg, you have the floor.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Based on what just was brought forward through you, Madam Chair, in connection to what's happening on Curaçao and Aruba, and I have seen that, for example, Curaçao with the UOC-WET, the law in connection to the university there, that because of the university being specifically mentioned and looking at it from a broader perspective, which St. Martin is currently doing, and it's nice to see that we're voorloper in that sense. So I applaud the university for that. But looking at the fact that it's focused on higher education and not specifically one university, I think then the suggestion in specifically mentioning, although I do understand that you would love that, of the university would love that, maybe also because of wanting this for so many years, but then on the other hand, looking at what happened in the past and looking at the other islands or countries, Aruba and Curaçao, that it can be maybe a contradiction in that sense. To maybe put it as an appendix would be more feasible or more logic in connection to not specifically mentioning one university, because then it can maybe look again at the part of what happened in the past with Curaçao and Aruba. So it's good to see that that might be a alternative in looking at the law and making it through the memorie van toelichting and maybe appendix connected to that. Yeah, that's just a more remark than a question. But I see that the university is also looking at that through you, Madam Chair.
Thank you, MP Roseberg. Any other member has a comment or a question for the university? That appears not to be the case. If I can just add to the questions and ask, in the event of the law, passing, and then whether USM is mentioned in the article or it refers to an annex by national decree containing general measures with the listing of the universities amongst which USM, what would be the formal relationship with the government? Firstly, let me ask, I know there was this, I don't want to use the word back and forth, but that's kind of what it was with respect to a MOU. So understanding between the university and government where funding, etc., is or was concerned. Was such a document ever signed? One, and if it was, or not, if it was or was not, what kind of formal relationship outside of the law, so in order to execute the law, how would that be formalized? Because there would have to be an understanding if, for example, the law passes that says, USM is of this stature and, it's entitled to contribution, subsidy, etc. So what outside of the law would then ratify that kind of a relationship between government and USM? Would you then have to present a plan in terms of what you would like to see for the development and growth of the university? So how would that relationship now, if it's established in the law, that that's what the institution is, then how would it be worked out in, the relationship by the ones given the subsidy, which would be the government, the country St. Martin, and USM? So if one of you can go into that a little, anticipating on the mentioning of USM as such an institution for St. Martin, what would be your responsibility then in terms of having that stature?
So, Madam Chair, thank you for the question. To answer the specific question about MOU, has USM had MOUs? Yes, we've had memoranda of understanding with the government of St. Martin on a number of occasions, often related to either subsidy or certain projects that needed to be carried out. In order to avoid the constant development and reduction of MOUs between government St. Martin and USM, we put forward the suggestion to have that Article X incorporated into this legislative piece. That would make very clear which is the main institution of higher education and scientific research upon which country St. Martin relies in order to carry out projects and to lead the entire education process as far as teacher training is concerned, as far as engineering is concerned, for policy making, for all of these aspects of governance within the country. We believe that Article X will fulfill this desire. And if we would have to rely upon that alternative where USM would be mentioned in the appendix, but also institution of higher education that receives funding specifically from the government of St. Martin, then we would have to, of course, design an MOU with the government of St. Martin, and that would also need to be accompanied with the TOR, the terms of reference, or the terms of operation, making clear what the relationship is between the institution and government. And I would just like to recall the last time we sat here, and there was a member of parliament that suggested that in order to facilitate nation building, that we stop looking at the university as a client, that the government of St. Martin stop looking at it as a client and see it as a partner and as an essential part to our identity as an autonomous country within the Kingdom of the Netherlands. So, yes, there's another reason why we would really prefer to have the Article X incorporated, and then the answer to your question is, if we are mentioned within the appendix, that we would use terms of reference that would accompany any MOU, any memorandum of understanding with the government of St. Martin. Memorandum of understanding is what we do with the collectivité. Memorandum of understanding is what we do with other institutions of higher education in our region. What we would like to see is a solid partnership, a solid relationship where everyone who's from St. Martin, whether you be a politician, whether you be a member of parliament, whether you be a professional, whether you be a laborer, that you recognize USM as that center of knowledge and knowledge production.
Thank you very much. And I see MP Lacruz. MP Lacruz, you have the floor. Thank you for the answer.
Thank you, Madam Chair Lady. Dr. Carmona, I do understand the wish, and I agree with you 100% that in order for us to be able to reach the point where our locals see the university or see the bigger picture of the university, that it gets that recognition. Because if I remember hearing anyone talking about the university, it's like, hey, oh, they're not accredited, and, that's a small university, and it always gets downplayed. And I think until we ourselves, and starting here in Parliament, start to treat the university as a university, recognize it as a university, when we do that, our people will be able to do that also. And we'll get more students that will maybe want to stay home and continue studying instead of always choosing to go to the Netherlands or even the US. So I'm extremely happy to hear what I heard today. Thank you.
Thank you, MP Lacruz. MP Mingret, you have the floor.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Thank you, Dr. Carmona, for your presentation and your staff. And I want to say pleasant good afternoon to my MP colleagues as well. Dr. Carmona, through you, Madam Chair, does the university provide some kind of support for the students, such as counseling, tutoring, or career guidance? That's one of my questions. And the second question would be, can you provide an insight into areas where the university is actively working to improve? That will be all, Madam Chair.
Thank you. I look to my right, I see everyone is writing, so Dr. Carmona Baez or Mr. Judd, any one of you ready to go, or you want? Okay, ready to go. You have the floor.
Thank you, Honorable MP Lacruz, for your kind words. I would just like to say, in response to your in response to Honorable Magrette's answer, I'd like to just mention just a few areas and where we've seen USM serve not only the people of St. Martin and the knowledge centers of St. Martin, but of other islands in the region. And that we've seen through our research projects, 3 of which have come to fruition during my tenure. One being Islanders at the Helm, and the other one from Zone MV, the Biomedical and Health Research Council of the Netherlands, that we've done together with Aruba and Curaçao. We are the institution that established CHEC. CHEC is the Caribbean Higher Education Council of the Kingdom of the Netherlands that is now recognized by the Dutch Ministry of Education, Culture and Science, and all the other ministries of culture and science and education in our region. We have CARP, which is the Caribbean Research Platform, which will be established this year. We have grown in terms of our academic offerings, most considerably the social work program. And of course, we've extended our Bachelor of Arts in Education to our sister islands of Saba and Statia. And 2 years ago, we signed an MOU with the government whereby the government committed to supporting students in the Bachelor of Arts of Education and what they call the professionalisering. So we're definitely growing. We're making strides in the Caribbean, not just as any simple institution of higher education, but as a leader in cutting-edge research. In terms of support, answering Honorable MP Margaret's questions, in terms of support for students, yes, indeed, we have a full-time counselor at the University of St. Martin who concentrates most of her efforts on students. Within this legislative piece, you will see that a counselor is needed, but not only a counselor, there are other services that need to be provided to students, and students also take a special place in this legislative piece that so urgently needs to be passed. One of them is representation at management meetings, but also at the board, so that we will have actually students being represented in the board in order to make this more democratic and inclusive space of learning and scientific production. Yes, we have tutoring. We have tutoring that is carried out by alumni, also by our own students. And we're very happy, of course, to announce that we have the academic foundation year that is being supported by the Ministries of Education of the 4 countries comprising the Kingdom. And here at USM, that academic foundation year is scheduled to begin in August. And that academic foundation year, just like you have it in Curaçao as well as in Aruba, will prepare students who are not yet ready to make a decision in terms of their career, but allowing them also to take courses at the university during that preparation year, courses that will allot them credits that are transferable to other universities. And we're going to be doing that for country St. Martin, and we're going to be doing that as well for the English-speaking part of the Caribbean Netherlands, that being Saba and Statia. Then we also have what is called, together with the Netherlands and Curaçao and Aruba, SEA, that is the Strategic Education Alliance, which was established 2 years ago, where we will be offering this academic foundation year, but also Kingdom Mobility. So this is a kind of Erasmus Plus for the Kingdom, whereby our students will be allowed to spend a semester abroad, not necessarily the Netherlands. It could be the Netherlands, but it could also be Curaçao and Aruba. And we will also be able to receive students from the Netherlands and from the other 5 islands comprising the Caribbean part of the Kingdom. Areas where we want to improve. Education is, as I said earlier, it's an ever-changing field. It changes with technologies, it changes with needs, it changes with labor market needs, societal needs. And we continue to promote improvement. We're always revising, we're always looking back at our academic programs, and we reflect upon this every year, especially when we produce our both our financial reports as well as our annual reports. And the areas that for improvement, we want to expand our not only our course offerings, but our academic program offerings, so our degree program offerings. We have some in the pipeline. I think it would not be inappropriate for me to mention one in information technology and networking, another in the performing arts, and also in public health. That is something that is hearing. So hopefully this legislative piece will be passed, but in the meantime, we're working together with FESA, with the Ministry of Public Health, to develop this degree. First, a concentration in public health, but we're really looking forward to developing a degree program in public health. And the list goes on in terms of desires, but those are concretely what we're working on now. We want to improve, of course, in student services to our students. Of course, the infrastructure that we have at USM needs to be, the physical plant needs continuous maintenance and improvement. And lastly, mention full-time faculty. And that is something that we really need to look at. We're the only institution of higher education within the kingdom that does not have full-time faculty. We know that any university needs to have at least a core of full-time faculty members who are also growing within their career and also in research. And of course, that can lead us in providing the best services of higher education that a university can do. Community-wise, I always speak of 4 pillars, and I hope I remember all 4 pillars of higher education here on St. Martin. One is accredited degree programs. Secondly is scientific research. Third is continuous education, what they also call lifelong learning. And fourth is community service, serving as a safe, neutral ground for public debate and discussion. We do offer a GED program. That is, the university does offer that GED program. But we also offer, together with the Ministry of Justice, a Coast Guard training program, a preparatory training. So within those 4 pillars, you will see that USM is active in servicing the country. Yes? I hope that satisfies your answer. Oh, of course, I have to mention, sorry, that we are also now in discussion and preparing for the training of public servants. Yes, and I would like to invite our Dean of Academics also to share a few words here.
Sure. Thank you. And Dr. Rigobert, you have the floor.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Thank you, Antonio, for that. Good afternoon, honorable MPs, and thank you so much for having us this afternoon. Perhaps the question that MP Lacruz posed allowed for me to make this intervention to the extent that the question remains, what is the vision? What is the ambition? Where do we go from here? And we all know that I'm only 6 months in on the job. Let me take this opportunity to thank the people of St. Martin and of USM for their very warm welcome and embrace. It is a cause I find myself very committed to, and that is taking USM to the next level. In that regard, Antonio has already indicated not only the programs that we have recently approved for delivery in the coming academic year, but one of the things we are very, very happy about is the extent to which community partners, stakeholders are reaching out to USM to offer educational services. It therefore means that evidently citizens do see USM as a thought leader, as a preferred institution of higher learning. And that is why, as we endeavor to diversify our curricular offering, both in response to what the global trends are, but more particularly and very importantly, what the labor needs of St. Martin are, alongside its own trajectory for its socioeconomic advancement. And that is why when Antonio mentioned the critical role of USM in nation building, I feel compelled to underscore that, because in a space where we are struggling to maintain or reaffirm our identity as a people, as a Caribbean people, as a people who have been swimming against the tide, and yet we've done so remarkably well. It says something about USM 35 years on, notwithstanding all that has happened, both in terms of climatic vulnerabilities and experiences, but also the competition with international and other regional institutions of higher learning as well. So what is the value proposition of USM? USM is ours. It's homegrown. It is forged, it is crafted in the image and likeness of St. Martin. And we must never lose sight of that. What does USM offer? It offers thought leadership in allowing for us to offer to citizens a product that they can relate to, that speaks immediately to the current needs, but also we can anticipate the needs of the country. What does USM offer? USM allows for us to stem the brain drain that we so bitterly complain about in this part of the world. So many of our students, when they do leave our shows, they seldom return. And that percentage of students who do not return to our shows is unsustainably high. What more, therefore, can we do to ensure that we keep our citizens at home, they stay here, plow back into the country that gave them a healthy start? And that is why we feel so committed to ensuring the ongoing innovation in our program offerings. Antonio did mention the area of creative arts, theater arts. With a country that is so dependent on hospitality, why not equip our citizens more meaningfully to contribute to the economic sustainability of the country? With respect to what's happening internationally and how it is USM can respond, the complement of our staff is rather interesting, faculty and staff, and I'll take this opportunity to plug in as well. To echo what Antonio did indicate, that we do need to have a healthy complement of full-time faculty. If indeed we are a university that is poised to continue to respond to the human development needs of the country, it means, therefore, we must have in our engineering room the persons who are dedicated full-time to that cause. In that regard, therefore, let me say that I'm very impressed with the level of partnership we've had with civil society organizations, government, and the recently held lectures that we've had to commemorate our 35th anniversary. It is evident how much goodwill there is towards the University of St. Martin, both by way of attendance, but commentary before and after. And with every activity that we host at USM, in the immediate aftermath, there's even more interest, that we can see a mushrooming. We can see that USM is not locked off in the backwaters of St. Martin. No, it is central to the business of nation building. It is central to the economic development of St. Martin. And I would want for us, therefore, to embrace USM as ours, and to partner, continue to partner even more meaningfully with government. Our recent endeavors with respect to embracing the various protocols and benchmarks as they pertain to quality assurance and ensuring that USM is very well positioned to secure accreditation, the ambition being for all of our programs over time. But let us not be too hard on ourselves. And in fact, it was rather fortuitous that shortly after joining USM, that UWI celebrated, the University of the West Indies, celebrated its 75th anniversary. And it was only then I realized, it dawned on me, that UWI is not several hundred years old, and yet it is seen as one of the premier, leading, state-of-the-art tertiary institutions, especially for the islands of the southern Caribbean, the Eastern Caribbean. And so at 35, USM is well on course to emulate that, and even to surpass those that were in the market ahead of USM. the beauty of coming in at this stage is that you'd have learned from the experiences of your predecessors, but you're also well positioned to engage in some, we used the word today, Antonio, and I walk back from the funeral service for our late colleague, innovation, forecasting. You know, what's the forecast for USM? And that forecast is not something that we can sit at USM by ourselves and engage in. It has to be a collective endeavor. It has to be with important partners, such as the government, such as civil society, such as the public sector, public and private sector agencies. And therefore, MP LaCruz and other colleagues, in your line of questioning, what I was hearing is that there is an appreciation for USM as our own. What more can be done to embellish that which we already do? And we do have a lot to celebrate 35 years on. But to the extent that we are poised for takeoff in an even more ambitious and meaningful way, the partnership of the government is so very important. Yes, by way of financial input, but also by according to USM, that stamp of approval, that recognition that we see you as the premier institution of higher learning. We see you, USM, as the preferred choice for our citizens. And that therefore speaks to how mechanically we manage the scholarship, bursary, study finance. It means too how we embrace opportunities for internship and apprenticeship. It means, too, the role that the government sees for USM in lifelong learning and upskilling and retooling of employees. It means all of these things. So it's not limited to giving us a healthy purse, and that's always very welcome, let me say that, but also the level of moral and material engagement will send a very strong signal to citizens that USM is indeed the preferred educational option for St. Martiners who desire a tertiary education offering. And yes, the ambition is over time to attract students outside of St. Martin and the wider Caribbean as well. I thank you for listening.
Thank you, Dr. Rigobert and MP, oh, sorry, it's okay. I saw MP LaCruz, but it's okay, he has indicated. So again, I want to thank you for your presentation, for responding to the questions by members of Parliament. I want to thank the members of Parliament for their participation in this meeting. And at this time, I would have actually allowed the representatives of the university to take leave for our meeting to continue. However, the next meeting would not have been one with third parties, where the quorum also counts if we have a sufficient amount of factions, but that does not count for the next agenda point. So rather than, I would have to thank and close this agenda point, but not the meeting, as we would have to come back on the agenda point number 2. So with that, again, thank all of you for your presentation here in Parliament, for the information provided. We will now decide as a Parliament when and how we move forward with the handling of the draft that is here in a public meeting of Parliament. And of course, the members of Parliament are equipped with the information and documentation as you have provided in this meeting today. So thank all of you once again, members of Parliament, thank you. And all of those tuned into this meeting and following the information provided, and I hereby now adjourn this Central Committee meeting of Parliament. Meeting adjourned.